Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the Owen Forward, the Art of Business and Content Creation. I am Dr. JJ Peterson. I am one of the marketing professors here at Owen, and tonight we are joined by a few people here who are with us in person, and then a large virtual group online. So welcome to everybody. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to have a great conversation tonight about the creative economy. The creative economy really is here. It is this whole thing, from everything from YouTube channels and podcasts and social media influencers, that is really impacting the way that not only we get information these days and get entertainment, but also the way so many companies are doing business and building their brands. And I know that for myself, this ever-changing world of the creative economy is always, the rules are changing, new things are happening all the time. And tonight, we're gonna be talking about that. We're gonna be talking about what the creative economy is, how businesses can engage in it in this new world that we live in, and how ultimately to build brands through the creative economy and through content creation. And to guide us tonight through this conversation is Sam Graber. And Sam is a Vanderbilt alum himself. 20 years ago? 21 years ago, he was here, which was a whole different world of content creation than we have today. And he has 20 years of experience of working in content creation and helping businesses and individuals build their online and creative presence. He works with social media influencers. His podcasts receive over 2 million downloads. He's worked with some of the top names in business. He is a sought-after speaker, a sought-after consultant that helps people create content in this new creative economy. And I am so excited that you have joined us.
Well, when you say that, I sound so important.
Well, you are. You're important to me, I'll tell you that, in our conversations already. I have learned so much from you. And side note, he's also a producer of, he produced a musical and plays. I mean, this guy is incredible. So I'm very excited to have you here and share with both our in-person and our online audiences about content creation and the new creative economy.
Yeah, well, it's great to be here. Thanks to Owen. Thanks for having me back, Dean. It's always a homecoming to step on campus and to be here inside the Owen building. And I know there are a lot of people who saw the announcement for this event and read the description and went, well, we're used to having the CEO of NASDAQ, and we're used to having executives from major airlines and titans of industry. And what's with podcast guy? So before we get into it, I just want to share that over the last 3 years, I've been working with social media influencers, one in particular who started posting videos in 2018, maybe 2019. I came into the picture in 2020, but started from nothing. And 3 weeks ago, we met in Washington, D.C. to do this. And if we could go to the video here, I just want to roll a little bit of this interview that was conducted.
You have two options. Start a third world war, go to war with Russia physically, or two.
Yeah. So this was an interview that the gentleman who I produced, Brian Tyler Cohen, conducted a 20-minute interview with President of the United States. It was only the 12th sit-down interview that the president has conducted since taking office. And we can come off the video now. So all this to say, I know that there was a story about President Biden meeting with TikTokers. There was a whole group of TikTokers that were going to get together. And then I think Saturday Night Live, subsequent to that event, lampooned it. Brian was actually supposed to be included in the group of TikTokers. He was adamant. He's like, I've been fighting on behalf of the Democratic Party and President Biden for so long with the videos that he produces. No, we're going to have our own sit down. And that's what happened. And when that interview was conducted, that was 2 days after Russia had invaded Ukraine and right after the Supreme Court nominee was announced. And I swore, I was like, there's no way that the White House is ever going to go through with some punk YouTuber, right, and have this full sit-down interview. And it wasn't just that they did the interview. The White House knew who he was. I mean, Jen Psaki came out, gave him a hug. Brian sat down with the chief of staff in the chief of staff's office for 10 minutes. This was a guy who started producing videos in 2018. And I bring all this up again just to say the power that social media influencers have has really changed how people, mass audiences, are receiving information, perceiving information, and how even the most, the powerful leader of the free world says we need to make sure that we leverage this so that we can reach an audience that in many ways is no longer being accessed by the traditional media channels. So, okay, the last 3 years, I've been working in politics. We are not going to talk about politics. There's not going to be any talk of politics. Don't worry, we're not going to get into politics. But what I hope we can get into tonight is how the work that gets done with the influencers and the tenets and a lot of the principles and gaming the algorithms, right? All of the little nuances of that space can be applied to whoever's listening tonight, whoever's here tonight, whatever industry you work in, whatever your role is, those things that can be taken away and applied to business. And so that's why I wanted to be here tonight. And again, this isn't to, I'm pointing to where the video is playing. The Biden interview is not here to go, look what I've done. It's not that. But it's just to demonstrate the gravitas of the influencer space and how that is really impacting the rules of the game.
Yeah, and I think that's so important to mention the business and the influence side of things because, a lot of people, when you think of social media influencers or content creation, they might immediately go to the TikTok dances or,
Right.
things like that. Or where, do I have to be on video? When you're talking about this, do I have to be on video and do a little dance while I'm pointing to phrases that are in, which I have done. I will admit I have done those things. But when we talk about kind of the creative economy and social media influence, let's define that a little bit.
Yeah.
When you talk about that, what does that space look like?
Right, that's a great question. So I can talk about what it used to look like.
Go.
Okay, so I graduated from Owen in 2001. And I was graduating with an emphasis in e-commerce, which at the time was a very sexy title back, in 2001, e-commerce. And I was entering the entertainment space. That's why I came to Owen. I wanted to work in the entertainment industry. Leading up to graduation in 2001, a very massive event happened in the entertainment industry, and it was going to influence everything about the creative economy. And I know everybody remembers where they were the day that AOL bought Time Warner, right? It's getting laughs here. So when that happened, it was massive. Remember how seismic it was? Like some little upstart, AOL is going to consume Time Warner. How is this going to work, right? And that was the creative economy back in 2001. There were no online videos. There were no liking each other, right? That was the creative economy, and so there was a lot of conjecture, and there was a lot of fortune telling that was going on as to what was going to happen. And I remember very distinctly there was a company called Atom TV, ATOM TV, that was talking about what if we put short videos online that users themselves can upload and trade around, and it got swallowed up in the AOL Time Warner deal, I remember. So then I went to work at Best Buy, and this is fully defining what the creative economy was. And I was very fortunate that I got hired to work at Best Buy, reporting directly to the gentleman who was featured in the Owen business case study. So at the time we were doing the Harvard business case study on Best Buy, gentleman's name is Wade Fenn, and he became the president of Best Buy's entertainment division. I got to go work directly for him. And at the time, consumer packaged goods was the creative economy. Best Buy had a 25% retail market share of music and DVDs. So it was shiny metal boxes at retail sell-through. And we knew at the time there was going to be a massive shift in the distribution mechanism for the content because Napster was already 2 years into its existence and having its impact on music, right? When we were at Best Buy, the motto was beat Amazon, not beat Apple, because Apple had just, I think, survived bankruptcy and got an emergency infusion from Microsoft. And I don't know if Steve Jobs was back at the helm at that point yet, maybe was. But that was the motto. The motto was beat Amazon because it was all about how many CDs and DVDs are being sold, okay? Well, let's fast forward to today. Nobody wants to talk about 2001, right? But the creative economy now, I think when we talk about the creative economy, the top of mind recall or the instant association that people would have is what you previously mentioned, right? It's the individual creator who is generating messaging that is direct to consumer without any intermediary altering or appending the media, right? It's what we're used to today with the YouTube channels that we subscribe to. I'm assuming everybody here subscribes to YouTube and has their favorite Instagram or loves following certain people on Twitter. You sound like a TikTok fan. But I believe now the top of mind association, the general parlance, are the social media personalities, the YouTube influencers, and even more so, the game streamers, right? Not a lot is talked about with gaming, but mobile gaming alone last year, I think was a $93 billion industry. That's not console, that's just mobile gaming. So the personalities who are streaming themselves playing live on games, most people here are going, I would never watch that. I'm included. But guess what happened several years ago? I got into chess. And I started watching like the best chess players in the United States streaming their games. That's kind of all I watch. Like, I don't know what shows are on Netflix. I don't know what's, hip these days with the serialized, episodic, televised programming. But I watch a ton of chess. And I realized, I'm like, oh my God, I'm following gamers. Like, that's me.
Yeah.
And that's really how the world has changed, because I feel that there's such a directness to the creators. There's an engagement and a closeness from the viewers to the creators that has really shifted the landscape of how information and relationships are perceived and built upon.
Yeah, I think that's so huge because, like you said, I remember when I got my first email, like my first email address, and it was Juno because it was free, but you had to pay for email if you had every email you sent was like 15 cents. That back there. And so there was these gatekeepers that really kept a lot of people from being able to directly get to the public, right? So there was distributors of media, there was distributors of music, there was distributors, and a lot of it was physical.
Right.
You got physical DVDs, you got physical videos, you got physical music. Mm-hmm. And then in the last 20 years, and really especially in 10 years, because YouTube's only like 10 years old, right?
It's older. It started 2005, 2006.
Yeah, so it's not that old, and all of that really began this democratization of content creation and accessibility to the public. And I think that, the rules then changed, right? So like Napster changed the rules, YouTube changed the rules, all these companies that allowed people to go direct to the public versus a bunch of distributors really changed the rules of the game. Mm-hmm. And we can see how that works for artists, and we can see how that, so now like maybe the bigger artists don't have a monopoly on all the stuff, but so everybody can get their music out, everybody can get their comedy out, everybody can get all the stuff out to the public easier.
Yeah.
And that works for individuals and artists in the creative space. But it also has changed the rules for business, right? Now, it used to be that if you wanted to go big, you had to have a Super Bowl ad, right? There was a gatekeeper that kept you like, that's the way you reach the masses, is on the 4 channels that existed and on the Super Bowl or these big events. And with the democratization of media, now everybody has access to the public through mostly what are free channels, at least to begin with.
Right.
So how, in that sense, has the rules really changed for businesses to get access to the public?
Yeah. So it's funny you bring up that there used to be 4 channels, because if you think about it, maybe there's still just 4 channels, right? Like if you're if you're somebody who's an executive at marketing for a major, let's say, healthcare company, I don't know if anybody here is a executive at a healthcare company. I'm not seeing any nods. But if you're somebody who's doing like top flight national ad buys, right, or you're driving your media or your campaign strategy, okay, and you're like, all right, well, we know we want broadcast and we know we're going to have some print, still exists, hey, and you're like, well, we're going to be social. Like, you kind of have 4 channels still, right? There's the Facebook thing that's still out there, I think, still, right?
They dropped the. I saw that in the movie.
They dropped the
in the
in the
movie.
movie.
They said they dropped the Facebook. Yes.
So there's Facebook, right? There's AdSense, which Google, which is YouTube, Insta, TikTok, Stream, Twitch. I mean, it's still limited, and as a creator, that's really dangerous, right? If you are getting big as an influencer, or if you have grown a popularity base on a particular channel, and that channel says, no, we're gonna smack you, or we're gonna pull the rug under from you, proverbially, right? Mm-hmm. That can harm you. And you're looking at me going, oh, that's interesting. I'm gonna tell you a story. So this happened to Brian. Brian Tyler Cohen's the gentleman I produce, who's the YouTube star. Okay, so this might have been 5 or 6 months ago. Brian uploaded a video that he was reposting. And the video was of, I think it was a white supremacist neo-Nazi rally in Charlotte, North Carolina. Mm-hmm. And he put some sort, I don't know what he wrote over it, but his commentary that he was posting over it must have flagged Facebook. And Facebook came and said, you have violated our community standards by posting this video. Brian's like, how could I violate the community standards? I'm just calling attention to this event through a video that's not mine. They essentially turned off his revenue. So he was making, I'm not going to give numbers, but he was making this, and overnight, he was making this. And so Facebook said, we're going to take this under adjudication. It's going to go through our internal review decision process, and ultimately we will come back and we will make a rendering as to whether or not we will turn back on your channel. We will turn back on your revenue. Well, guess how long that took? Months. Now, Brian's got something like 750,000 followers on Facebook. So when you have a lot of your income coming from a few number of channels, and all of a sudden those channels say, we're going to change the rules of the game, that's where the rules change. The rules change so fast because the people who own the game say, guess what, we're changing the rules. So Facebook, as we all know, right, for over the years, they're like, the algorithm, we have to chase the algorithm. The algorithm changes. What you're allowed to post changes. What you can't say changes. And we're now going to restrict a lot of certain voices overnight changes. Well, thank God Brian's got a really amazing relationship with YouTube. Otherwise, he would be like screwed. I mean, that's his livelihood. So the rules of the game not only change for business, the rules of the game change for the content that's being generated, how you're allowed to deliver that content in terms of, your posturing of that content, and then how you're allowed to engage with people after that content. So yes, the rules have changed for business, but the rules have also changed for the platforms by which businesses engage with their consumers through the influencers and the brands that they want to attach with.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's a good answer to your question, but
no, it makes, because I think that is one of the things that for a lot of people probably listening and in the room that feels very overwhelming about this whole new world, right? That it is constantly changing.
Yeah.
So, let's just use say Instagram, for instance.
Okay.
First it was you post pictures, then they started pushing stories,
right.
And now it's reels, right? And
Reels.
so businesses and individuals, you kind of go, well, I can't keep up with it.
Right.
I can't keep up with all the changes that are happening on a daily basis.
Right.
And in one platform, let alone 6. And so that, I think, stops a lot of businesses in particular from engaging at the level maybe they could,
Right.
because you either have to hire people to do it full time or multiple people or an outside company. So for people who feel that sense of,
Right.
I think from even times I've gone well, I hate it. I'm gonna be angry about it, and I'm not gonna do it.
Right.
And so I give it up. I go, I'm not engaging in this. I'm angry about the change versus stepping into the change and trying to figure out how to leverage it.
Yeah.
And so for people who might feel that same thing, who are going like, well, it's changing all the time and I'm frustrated by that, how can we actually shift our mindset from being frustrated with the change in the movement and actually leverage what's happening in this world to grow our businesses?
Yeah. What's interesting is that businesses are attempting to catch up and stay with a curve that's constantly changing. But yet, for those companies, those platforms, are the rules really changed, right? So I start thinking, as you were saying, like, oh, they're introducing reels, they're trying to, have new they want to grow. I'm like, right, because their rules are, hey, at any time, is 3 months or less, we have an earnings call coming up. Like, they are publicly traded companies. They have to beat the street. That's their game, while they're constantly churning underneath what's happening with their platform, right? Like adding new features. But your question of like, what can we do as businesses, or what can businesses do to engage? I mean, I loved your point earlier about you don't want to be the president of the company. Like, so
I'm a good dancer. I'm not going to lie about it. But
I'm not going to deny you have the moves.
I got the moves.
like it. But like, if you're the president of a business, do you want to be doing the TikTok dance?
I do not.
I like your point. It's like undermining the authority.
Yeah.
And you're essentially destroying whatever, brand you might have, right? Because businesses want to attach to positive brands. All right, so let me talk a little bit about where I think the world has gone. And of course, I don't want to make it sound like I'm issuing any pronouncements that are like grand, or I don't want to sound like I'm an unassailable authority, because I'm not. I can only just talk about the work that I've done and just bring the experience that I have. And that comes from, okay, yes, obviously politics, which if you were to look at the bubble, whatever the sphere, the ecosystem, whatever you want to call it, of online influencer ad-generated revenue, right, or viewership, right, politics is kind of small, right, compared to like gamers or compared to Mr. Beast, right, out there. I hope everybody knows who Mr. Beast is. Very popular. Okay.
Yeah, totally do.
Very, very popular with the kids. But politics is relatively small. However, I think it's what politics represents as to where online influencer in the creative economy is going. And that is with cause-based action, and that is with social change action. So it doesn't have to be political, but I believe more and more brands and more businesses want to align themselves with influencers who are authentic and who are operating on behalf of change good for the world. Okay, so it's like, Sam, that's a nice word, authentic. Great, we get it. What does authenticity mean? Okay, so something I've learned along the way in working with influencers and having brand attachment is this. Don't say anything on behalf of a brand or on behalf of commercializing or monetizing your platform. Don't say anything that you wouldn't say for free. I'm not sure Steph Curry, who shoots three-pointers for the Golden State Warriors in the National Basketball Association, I'm not sure Steph Curry would walk around freely and go, hey, everybody, go get yourself a sandwich at Subway tonight, if he wasn't getting compensated a lot for it by Subway, right? But these influencers, what they are doing online, the authenticity of who they are saying it for free. And if a social action group or a brand or some sort of cause-based organization wants to align themselves with them, they're going to do it because it matches up with the cause. And so I really feel the world is going into a cause-based place because the people who are on these platforms, the younger people, have sort of adopted a life approach that is based on cause. Like we are looking at a demographic that is mission oriented. Not to say that you and I aren't mission oriented, right? But we're talking about business, and our scoreboard is what? We have a scoreboard. It's called money. I'm not sure the scoreboard will only be money going forward. Yeah. I'm really not sure the scoreboard will only be money. Now, I know people are listening and going, Sam, perhaps you've been working in this little space of yours too long. It's about money. And I get it. It is about money if you're in business, right? That is the scoreboard. I'm just saying maybe it's not only going to be about money going forward.
Yeah. And I think that when you mentioned the authenticity inside of things is obviously the generation that's coming up, and even people who are in business and consumers right now, and we're not talking teenagers, we're talking people who are, Gen X and Gen Y are very media savvy. Right. So they've been sold things for a long time. They've been in this environment and they're able to sniff out authenticity.
Right. I mean, they don't consider themselves customers, right? Let's talk about language, right? So I love that you brought this up, teenagers. And they don't call themselves customers. You know what they call themselves? Followers, right? And buyers, nobody calls themselves a buyer anymore. They call themselves a viewer or a subscriber. And markets, I mean, we don't use the word market, we use the word community. Communities and community-driven goals are so huge right now in the influencer space and the creative economy. And just that tilt in lexicon, right? Like, of course, your classes that you teach here, and we could walk around and we go up to, the students and go, by the way, you're not a buyer in a market, you're a viewer in a community. They'd be like, move on. But I'm telling you, like, if you're working in business and you're interested in understanding how the rules of the game have changed, this is how the rules of the game have changed.
Yeah.
And
I think that's so key. And so when you're approaching, say, as a business, creating content,
right,
recognizing that in that people are used to getting sold to,
right,
and they can sniff out when you're not in their favor, and when you're not about building community, and you're not about a cause, and you're creating all this other stuff. And so I think for me, and I'd just be curious I do a podcast like for my business. Also do a lot of webinars, a lot of YouTube kind of videos, free kind of content creation that goes out. One of the things that we really have chosen to do as a brand is say that we are going to be a generous brand. We have never been punished for being generous of giving information. And so what we try to do in all of that content is, as we're creating this community, say, what value can I give versus what value can we get? Right. So when we're creating podcasts, YouTube, social media, Instagram, the whole goal of that creation, then any content we create in that creative space is about what value can we give, because we know that will improve other people's lives. It's a little bit of a cause-oriented position, and then also it creates community because it's a group of people who now are helping each other, you know, and so that's one of the things that drives our content creation, is saying, what value can we give versus what value do we get out of this? Yeah. Is that some of the kind of what you're talking about with that whole, like, it's not just about the bottom line anymore? Right.
I mean, if you're going to start a business, or you're going to start a line within a business, there's usually some sort of market problem that is trying to be addressed or solved, So we are going to create a product because the market is absent of this solution. We are going to create this service because there's a deficiency in the market, or there's an opportunity in the market that no one has yet filled, But that's not what the creative economy is doing right now. The creative economy is not saying, I think there's just an absence of this. Okay, so I'm gonna use Brian again as an example, and then I'll get off Brian and I'll talk about some of the other influencers and the other businesses that I'm working with. Okay, so when Brian started, he came out of a world where he was working for an organization, I won't get into politics, that had gotten very, very huge after the 2016 election and the Trump administration came into office. And the organization that he worked with got popular by driving traffic on Facebook to a website. And Brian said, I just want to be a political commentator. I don't want to be trying to make someone else money by writing these articles that have sort of inflammatory or clickbaity headlines that get people to go to a website where then advertisers spend. So he said, I'm just going to do political commentary, and he's going to do it on current news. And he is going to do it on a very, very, very low production budget scale, okay? So he had like a $70 like AV light stand. I mean, there's a fancy light here tonight, but he's just kind of like this, a white background and a $70 light stand. And I think he has one tie or two ties and a coat. And I'm not sure if he's wearing pants in his video. You can't see that low, right? So he started. And what he did was, and this is going to be very interesting, stay with me. What he did is he was taking news clips from cable news networks, particular cable news network, and excoriating it by responding to it and giving like a 3 to 4 minute sort of monologue or soliloquy. So that his entire video that he was uploading to YouTube might have been 5 to 8 minutes in length, right? Here's the news clip from, or the clip from the cable news channel followed by his commentary. And you go, okay, well, great, whatever. Here's what's so wild. He doesn't have a TV. He doesn't have a subscription to cable news. So I'm like, wait, are you pulling this from other sources? He's like, yeah. So he's getting its second source and then essentially doing third-hand commentary. So all of the product unboxing videos, like Unbox Therapy, I don't know if people watch Unbox Therapy, it's a very popular YouTube channel, right? It would be like someone watching an unboxing and taking the clip of somebody else's unboxing and then putting commentary over it, right? And from that, he got a massive following because he was speaking from his heart about issues that he cared about and causes that he cared about, okay? He went from zero to interviewing the president. I mean, I produced the podcast, him interviewing the president. It's like, that's insane. But here's something else that you have to understand about the industry. I think I'm responding to your question. I hope I am. If we go back and watch the recording later, it's like, Sam, you went on this wild tangent. You didn't answer the question. But here's what's interesting and what businesses should know, that these influencers, they are a very, very exhaustible resource, right? We get that when we have a show that we watch. Like, what happens if the lead actor suddenly expires, right? What happens if the lead actor or lead actress is no longer available? Oh, well, or forget, let's just say the lead gets sick. It's okay, they're unionized. These influencers, there is no union. They are not unionized. There's no collective bargaining agreement. They don't have any sway over their compensation from these small number of platforms that are paying them. If something happens, they get sick or injured, they lose their voice, the internet goes out on their end. That's it. And so the exhaustibility of it is wild to me, because I think, well, for influencers, the creative economy, that's not a business, right? A business is something you make money from while you're out playing golf. This is a job. And the second you don't show up for work, you don't get paid. Would you want to do that job? Would anybody here want to take that? I mean, I work in the space, and I got to tell you, maybe it's because I'm older now and I don't have the energy, but I wouldn't want to do that. I mean, here's what happened. We're sitting at Old Ebbitt's Grill across from the White House in D.C. celebrating the president interview. And I'm like, got a beer going. I'm like, this is awesome, right? I look over and everybody, what can we share? We're sharing like clips. Oh, send this to them. And they're just constantly in this world. Businesses are not constantly in this world. And they might want to be if they want to play in that space.
Well, I think that kind of goes back to a little bit of what I was saying earlier, is I think that's why a lot of businesses avoid it, to the depth that maybe taking advantage of it, of the new rules and the new economy, as much as they could, because it feels like, well, I have to be like this, or I have to always be on, or I have to be watching the algorithms. But you've worked with a number of businesses that have entered into this space in some pretty effective ways, right? That are not just an individual influencer, but Could you talk about that a little bit,
Yes.
about just maybe some
Yes.
of those businesses
Yes.
that then have been in this space and done it well?
Yes, let me get off influencer. Let's go to business.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to pull up ad advocacy? Okay. So this is another, he's become a very good friend of mine. He started at advocacy because, and I'm going to read from my notes. I hope this is okay. We can come off and come back. So I apologize for reading off my notes, but I want to get some of this right. What at advocacy wanted to do was get into the online petitioning and the online action space by connecting organizations, cause-based organizations, mostly political action and nonprofit organizations, and brands with particular social media influencers. And the influencers would essentially say, hey, my audience, I want you to know that there's a petition right now that you should be aware, that you should take action on. Click the link below and get your name and get your email on this petition, because it's a cause I care about and it's a cause I want you to be involved with, okay? Whatever the petition is. It could be something for the Environmental Defense Fund. I'm sorry, everybody out there's like, how left is this conversation going to go? But it could be something for the Environmental Defense Fund, whatever the action is. This group at advocacy is brokering the relationship between the cause-based organization and the influencer. And it's a win-win-win, because everybody gets paid the second that someone out there, a viewer, a listener, clicks and then submits their email to the petition. There's money going on right now. A big mistake that advertisers make when they work with Facebook or AdSense is that they pay the same for the quality of the leads, but it doesn't matter if the lead takes the first action, right? Which is what a lot of marketing execs and marketing teams are looking at. It's like, are they taking the action? What really is important about is taking the second or the third action. And so what's really interesting about ad advocacy in this business is that they are monetizing popularity outside of network control. So Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, they are no longer involved in the economics that are being generated after someone clicks a petition and puts themselves into an organization's sort of active operating donor, subscriber, or a petition network. And I really think this is a perfect example of cause and values-based concerned action, because creatives, and I'm sure to some degree businesses, don't want it to feel like a transactional relationship anymore. I don't believe businesses, viewers, watchers, and the influencers, nobody wants it to be just transactional anymore, right? I mentioned earlier, making the world better. But as people, influencers are making money selling out their viewer base to online petition groups, they feel as though they're actually not only monetizing the reaction, but that they're also putting their authenticity in those economics that are being generated. And those economics, a ripple effect, right? Because they continue to grow for the organization that's doing the acquisition.
Interesting. So for me, as I hear that, and I'm thinking about my own, one of the things that I take
Yeah.
away from that is, and this isn't quite what you were saying, but it's really what I was taking is, one, for businesses that are looking to get into this space, you don't have to be the influencer. You can actually connect with people who already have audiences that are outside of your network.
Right.
And when you're doing that, one of the things you're looking for is an authentic connection with somebody who matches up with your brand.
Right.
And then ultimately is able to track and produce results.
Right. And there's another element. That's a good point. There's another element to it. Like, I think businesses also want to know that there's accountability in the mechanism that's functioning as the broker between business brand and influencer, right? We've all watched YouTube. Does Google really have any accountability for the dynamic ad insertions that are going in? Maybe they do. It sure doesn't feel like it to me. And in the ad market, you want to talk about how influencers, or you want to talk about how influencers are disrupting markets. I mean, the advertising market, to me, this is just ripe for disruption, because I really feel that businesses want to know that there's accountability in the middle, that the influencer has the heart in the right place. They're willing to do things that they say for free, right? But that advertising network, that brokerage, it's like, we want to make sure there's accountability there as well, and the accountability isn't just dollars and cents. So yes, sure, part of the values are that people should get paid. I mean, there's a value to people, and we want people to get paid for it. But along with visibility campaigns and awareness campaigns and brand enhancement campaigns, I mean, maybe you disagree with me, but I really feel that businesses want to know that there's accountability in the middle.
Agreed. Yeah.
You know, that it's not just, oops, well, we ran that ad and we probably shouldn't have dynamically inserted that there. So let's come off of YouTube and video for a second. Let's just go to our world that we work heavily in, which is podcasting. I mean, there's a reason that all the ads that I produce, or all the ads that I'm asked to oversee, they're host-read ads. Like, we really are against the dropping in of ads that are not being read by the hosts. I mean, host-read ads are the most influential, I guess, to the audience. They're the ones that the listening audience will take the most action. These are the pre-roll ads and the mid-roll ads. I'm not sure how many people make it to the post-roll, right? But there's a reason that those host-read ads have the most impact. And it's because there's direct accountability along with the cause. So if you're a business, right, and I don't mean to put like people here in the audience on the spot just because I can't engage with the people that are watching. Like, I don't know how many people here are working in marketing or communications or brand positioning versus just finance. But if you're really thinking about the brand of your business, traditional media, like, okay, we think we know we're going to get put in a flight on this show at this time, right? If you're going to do a local cable market buy, if you're going to do a national flight ad, right? But don't you want to feel that there's some sort of accountability between yourself and the influencer, yourself and the voice that's generating the message that's being followed? I mean, I'm actually asking,
Yeah, I don't want to spend money for no reason.
Right, you don't want to spend your money for no reason. And where do you work?
I own an intermodal container business.
Oh, really? And here in Nashville?
Yeah, we're working on a collapsible model that'll take 4 in place of 1 currently.
Okay, I'm just going to repeat that because so you're working on a collapsible bottle?
Yeah, so the 20 and 40-foot intermodal containers that exist in the market today.
You're talking about the trucking containers, like for OTL shipments, trucking?
The Maersk containers.
Yeah.
Where we can put 4 in the place of 1.
So this is really fascinating. So you're talking about, like, when you see the truckers doing, it's OTL, OTR?
Yeah.
Like, so long haul and then short haul. So they're picking the containers up at the depots, at the ports, port of entries, like these shipping containers that are coming in on frigates from like China.
Yeah,
Everywhere. So Port Elizabethtown is Elizabethtown one of the major ones?
Yes.
Yes. And then they're basically getting put on trucks and getting taken across the country. These are large shipping containers, and you're saying you can take 40 footers and collapse them into this 4 in the size of 1?
Yeah, we can do 20, 40, and working on 53s, 4 in the place of 1.
How do I get involved with your business? That's fascinating.
Right. I welcome that.
So, right, like when you want to spend money, and I don't know how many influencers are directly, going into trucking and logistics, right? But right, I mean, trucking and logistics is very sexy right
It's
now.
hot
Though.
right now. So
It's
hot.
huge. It's
Trucking logistics so hot right now.
Any more green initiative side of things on that end.
okay. So right now you're over there going, how the heck does Sam Graber, some guy, know about this? All right. So I launched in late 2019. The first episode hit 2020 January. A podcast called American Refugee. And I did it because I wanted to build a narrative series that focused on displacement, that looked at everything from human displacement in form of immigration and refugee, but then also to look at it in a broader space. So I didn't know there was a pandemic coming, of course, but my 4th episode, I went out for a day with a trucking legend. and I drove with him all day, and we had this incredible episode. And it was so fascinating to me that the truckers can basically be the Sears of the future. Like, you can look in the hull of a container and go, this is what's coming to the economy of the country based on what they're driving and what they're delivering. And it was really just about supply chain displacement and the displacement of how anything gets anywhere and how that just get totally overhauled in a pandemic. That's how I happen to know so much about trucking and container shipping. But even then, it's like, do you want to put your brand in the mouth of an influencer and not have any accountability in the middle? Like, where do you want to have your brand positioned? And how do you reach your audience? And how do you do it in a way that's effective without seeming like you're just having somebody sell out to shill, who you are and what you're doing?
Well, and social innovation is one of our biggest plays, right? We've talked about
Social innovation.
You put 4 in the place of 1.
Right.
What do you do with all of these single containers out there?
Right.
And it's looking at partnering with other metropolitan areas and saying, can we create underprivileged housing units and can we create like a Tom's model type thing?
Right.
And really taking it beyond just saying, hey, there's this business effect,
Yep.
right? Like a huge savings in the market, or here's this green effect for ocean vessels sitting out in harbors. But there's this whole other play towards what do we do to help serve the communities, because logistics exist in a vacuum.
Logistics exist in a
Right?
vacuum.
It's all hums behind the scenes.
Hums
until
behind the
something
scenes.
breaks, like the supply chain crisis, and we all cry because we can't get things off Amazon, myself included. So,
Sorry for everybody who
what
can't
do you
hear
do,
this.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
But anyways.
Yeah. Let's talk. But yeah.
I think that's, what you bring up. So this is really interesting. So we have a business here
Right.
who works in what probably a lot of people would not consider a tradition. Like, it's not a fashion brand. It's not a music brand that, a lot of people, when they think of the content creation space, that's like, oh yeah, social media influencers. But
Trucking.
is
logistics,
in trucking and logistics, but also connected with changing the way the world works, right? And making the world a better place.
Mm-hmm.
So let's bring some practical here, because I know we're going to be going to questions here in just a second from people who are online, but we'll kind of start with this question here. So somebody in this space, what are some things right now that you would say, all right, so you want to enter into the digital influence world, the creative space. Very practically, what are some tips that you can offer somebody who is a business, but it wouldn't be like the typical, like, oh yeah, we should be on social media all the way.
Oh, now we're putting me on the spot.
Yeah, we're going. I mean, you're a consultant, so
here we go.
yeah. So we want one kind of.
So I can speak from some experience. So let's just take not logistics and trucking, but let's take something like pharma. And so pharma sales, there was a doctor that wanted to start a podcast and had a very small listener base. I think there was something like 2,000 or 3,000 listeners. But all of those listeners were also doctors who were either managing or leading partners in private practice. And so if you're a pharma company and you're like, well, I could spend a lot of money on, taking out full color glossies in whatever trade association or trade magazine, or I could pay a smaller amount of money and just have an ad put in a podcast that I know all of my buyers are listening to on a weekly basis. I mean, that is some targeted messaging that's going to have enormous ROI.
Yeah.
So if you are looking to say, where do I want to put my information out there, or where do I want to go, it can be something as simple as, we're going to have a produced 30 or 60 spot, 30-second or 60-second ad. Or it can be, hey, I want to take my leader of my company, the president of the company, or I want to take the people who are using the product, and I want to put them on as guests at certain casts or certain shows. I mean, I don't think you want to be doing dances on the trucks, on top of the trucks. Maybe you do. Maybe you want to be dancing on top of trucks. But I think it's really about understanding what type of communication you want to have, not just today, but for the next several years. And the values that you have as a company and the values that are the underpinning of your brand. Whatever those values are, whatever the characteristics are that the company says, this is what we stand for, you don't want to just stand for it tomorrow. You want to stand for it for the next 5 years, 10 years, because there may not be a TikTok or an Insta or whatever, but there will be what the values are. Say, how do we best communicate those values in the most effective ways, in the most consistent ways, through multi-channel that can get us in front of the people who are in our industry, the influencers, not just the splashing, but like, how can we get in front in a way that says we're here because of our values, and we want to make you aware of not just our newest product or not just our latest invention, but what we're doing as a company to help our industry and to help our consumers and to help the country, if not the world as a whole.
I love that. I love that in thinking in terms of the values, not just product of like what you're putting out there. And then also, where are your customers? They may be on TikTok, but they may not be.
Right.
And so why are you wasting time on TikTok and Instagram if that's really not where your audience is? You might reach 1 million people on TikTok and not a single customer. But you could go on a podcast that only has 15 listeners, but 5 of those are in your customer base. So identifying where is your audience hanging out and where are they connecting with people of similar values and putting yourself there.
Right.
I love that. Well, let's get a question. I know we have some questions from our virtual audience. So what's a question from virtual?
So the first question is, what do you think has been the most challenging aspect of companies switching to social media marketing and working with influencers and content creators for promoting their business or product?
You want to repeat that?
Okay, yeah, so if I can remember all that. But the question was, what is the biggest difficulty that businesses find in switching to social media content and marketing, specifically working with influencers?
You want to take it?
I want to take it that way. I think when it comes to that, I think the biggest thing I would say that I see with a lot of companies that I work with is that they think of kind of what we were just talking about, exposure equals success. And so they're looking to connect with big names that may not be authentically hold the same values of their brand. Or they're trying to be on all of the channels when in reality their people are not on all their people might just be on LinkedIn, or they might be on YouTube. And so they're creating all of this energy, time, and spending money on content that might be building the brand in the sense of getting their name out there a little bit more, but is actually not in the marketing space that's really connecting with the customers that they want to engage with. So that's, for me, I think when I work with companies, that's the biggest difficulty, that I see them going, all right, we need to be on social media. So that means their president needs to be on TikTok, or they need to be with TikTok influencers. No, you don't.
Right.
You need to be where your audience is. If I was selling homemade pies, I typically might start out by going to a farmer's market because that's where my people are, and so you're looking for that kind of thing of where the people that you sell to hanging out. Start there. Don't try to hit everybody, and connect with those platforms and those influencers that actually have a connection to your brand, because I don't agree with it, all press is good press, kind of thing. I think a lot of press is a waste of money.
That's good. Yeah. This is the next question. That's good.
So we have time for 1 or 2 more. So we wanted to see if the audience has any more. If not, we can go back to.
So time for 1 or 2 more questions and see if the audience has more. Yeah.
Anybody here? Yeah.
Just to make sure. So one of the things that we've talked a lot about, given kind of how segmented our product is,
How segment the product is. Yeah.
we're not only thinking about gaining followings on social media, but creating movements, right? One, I have to create a movement for this product to become accepted. 2 is I have to then create a movement for it to be
Create a
adopted.
movement. Okay.
And so moving. And so when you think about kind of building those audiences and those influences, what advice do you guys have of just kind of thinking about where to start and what shape that takes?
Okay. So if I could paraphrase or short maybe, when you think about communicating first about a new product or a new initiative, how do you go about identifying the audience? Is that?
Sort of, yeah. I mean, I think I know that's part of it, right? We know there's this big green play. We know we have this great product. We know who our customers are, but it's how do you start looking to who do you need to go to create the movement for those folks to hear enough noise to say we need to acknowledge this?
Right. Yes. So you're saying, how do you address the market? What's the channel to address the market? That's a really good question. My experience is that the agencies are still out there. And the advertising agencies and the channel markers, as I call them, still play a valuable role in saying, we need to help you get your brand, to tell the story of your brand, to potentially position the brand, to say, here's how we want to go to market for you. We're going to come up with that strategy, because they work in that space. And where I live now in Minneapolis, there are some very successful advertising agencies that work with large companies. But if you're not a large company, how do you actually go out and address the market? It's really easy. You don't need an agency in the middle to go right to an influencer, or to go right to a mouthpiece, or right to somebody to say, hey, I want to connect and I want to talk about how we can work together. Most of the voices, I don't want to say personalities and I don't want to say influencers, right? Because the word starts to get a little stale on the tongue. But the voices out there, whoever the voices are, you can just go direct to where those voices are. So I don't want to get in the weeds on a particular issue. But whether you're in an industry or there's a trade, there's either a national association, right? There's somebody out there who's speaking to the demographic, right? There's some sort of voice that exists right now. And if the voice doesn't exist, could be a cool time to figure out a way to create your own voice and get it out there. I'm not saying it'll be easy, because most fade. Most won't realize how difficult it is to create a sustained communications mouthpiece. But if you're a business out there, there is definitely a way to go direct to the voice, or to create a voice that can be perpetuated within the channel that already exists.
Yeah. I think when you're talking about, one of the things you talked about was, how do we engage and create this movement, right? So the things, if I was going to be moving in that space, the thing that I would be asking is, what other people on what channels are currently in that same kind of space? So you're creating a movement that's making a world a better place by getting rid of extra shipping containers, using old shipping containers to create housing for underprivileged. There's, in Las Vegas, there's an entire mall that's built out of old shipping containers. Here in Nashville, we have office buildings that are being built out of shipping containers, right? So there's people who are in that space that are saying, we want to take the old way of doing things that actually hurt the earth, and we want to change it and make a movement. There are people that exist in that space. They might not be in shipping container space, but they exist in that space.
Yeah.
So then how can you partner with them, or use their channels to basically create public relations opportunities, unpaid advertising? So what podcasts can you be on that you're talking about it? What YouTube channels can you be on? What influencers are doing that you can connect with? So you're looking for the space of people that's already doing it. Then what he was saying here too is, Sam was saying is, then if it's not there, create it.
Right.
Can you create a podcast that isn't talking specifically about shipping containers, but is talking about the philosophical movement you're trying to get going? So then the people you have on are other people who are in that same space. Can you create a YouTube channel? Can you create a weekly video vlog, or a weekly series on Instagram that live in the philosophical space, not the buy shipping containers marketing, right? Of like, this is why shipping containers, our shipping containers is better, and this is the problem. No, not traditional. In the new creative space, you're saying, how do we bring the philosophical issue into play and create our own channels that live into those? And I think everybody can kind of do that as well, right? You're kind of saying, if the cause of essentially, if your business is more than just about selling widgets, it's about making the world a better place, find channels that are doing that same type of things and get connected with those, whether that's through interviews or magazines or anything you can get in those spaces. And if it's not there, create your own and invite other people into it that then can actually be a part of making that movement happen.
Yeah. Are we done? Did you stop it already?
I think we're all done.
Oh, you didn't stop
No,
it?
not stop it. Well, We're done. We're out of time, but maybe just one quick little wrap up, just one more thing to kind of put a bow on this and say, first off, thank you, because we'll probably be done as soon after this, but thank you all for coming and being a part of this. Appreciate it so much. I hope it's been helpful, but just to kind of wrap this up with one little kind of final comment for everybody here.
Yeah, next time it'll be back to the CEO of NASDAQ, and you won't have to listen to me anymore, right? No, thanks so much for registering. Thanks for listening. It's a really amazing time to be active in the United States economy. Only good things are going to come. The best is yet to come for our country. I really believe that. And I know, even working in a space where the product has been rage, I mean, I've worked in a space where the product has been an emotion called rage. It hasn't debilitated me. I truly believe the best is yet to come for the United States, and I'm proud to be from our country. And I'm really grateful that I got to go to Owen. Yeah. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And I hope that you can take this and, like we talked about earlier, not just fight against it and be frustrated by it, but leverage the opportunities we have to grow our business and change the world. So thanks for much for being here.